We have to change our thinking about who we are in relationship to each other. We've been living in a competitive society for too long, and the world we see is the result. The ego, the competitive ego. What we have to do is learn how to cooperate and drop the ego and realize, again, that if we have people in one country that are very poor and people that are very wealthy, the wealthy are going to have to get big armies and big fences to keep those other people out. It's not going to work with the divisions of society that we have today and the stratification.
Man has to go through a change to realize that his life should be lived for the unity of mankind, and that we're all like one man in one heart, and we're sharing that desire, sharing that thought. We're on mutual connection, making mutual concessions in reciprocity, like cells of a living body.
It's so simple, but we make it so difficult, and it's these hard things, these challenges, these horrible things we see are there to urge us to be better than we are. And I think until we start seeing that, they will continue, no matter on all levels.
We look at our economic crisis, we look at our ecological crisis, we look at our spiritual crisis, and we say, I'm not happy, society's not happy, what's wrong with us? So that is the trigger. We have to have problems to have solutions. Problems create creativity. There's no such thing as a problem. A problem is essentially a transition. So I see the crises of today as a transition point for humanity. I see them as not necessarily something that's out of the ordinary.
Again and again in nature, from the very most ancient bacteria to more recent species, they go through a juvenile phase of hostile competition to establish themselves. And then they discover the economics of cooperation. And when they find that it is cheaper and more efficient and more beneficial for everyone to feed your enemy rather than fighting them, then we are on the way to the new civilization we're all looking for.
The video I just posted about the virus, about the ecology of viruses, that talks about how we have viruses in us right now that we've adapted to, and they've adapted to us, and they're actually beneficial to us, to our body, to how we function, to how we digest food, along with bacteria. It's that way. And it talked about how because the coronavirus is a new virus, that we haven't adapted to it, so it's going to kill people that it is viral to. And that's nature, that's evolution, right? That's what we've been talking about. Those things in that time period that are susceptible to that will die, and then they won't pass on genes, so they won't be passing on those genes that are susceptible to future generations. And that's genetics, right? That's evolution at its core. Where we're different is we're not waiting. We don't have to wait for genetic changes, for such dramatic or drastic ends. We can understand the problem and act in our world, create behavioral strategies to circumvent it, to minimize it. Distancing, that's part of it. We make that choice to distance. Why? Because those people who are going to pass, that already have it, will pass. And it's not something we should accept as gleefully, but that is life. But if we use our intelligence, we separate, we wear masks, what happens is the virus dies down. Eventually we have a treatment for it, we have a vaccine for it. So our intelligence and our ability to figure out on a microscopic level what's going on, and then think of ways to determine how we can avoid the tragedies that this will bring, is our gift, is our evolution, is our ability. Not just genetics, but using our intelligence of genetics, of evolution, of our world, of ourselves, of our own biology, of our own sociology, to apply that to then mitigate the deaths, to bring that cooperation between the virus and us together. as human cultures, we are one human family with diversity of cultures. Right now we're trying to kill each other and hoard resources so we can be at the top of the hill. At what point do we realize that we should be working together as a human family? That we can cooperate and actually be happier, more secure, and with the technology we have today, we can update our farming to regenerative farming, local farming, certainly sustainable energy across the planet. These two things alone would dramatically change our relationships with the planet and with each other. That's why they are such a threat. That's why the Green New Deal was such a threat. It wasn't that it was too expensive. Money has nothing to do with it. Bringing us together in cooperation in each other's lives for health and well-being is a threat to market dominance. And market dominance is what this whole world is set up to maintain right now.
The wonderful part about nature being fractal is that we can use patterns in nature to understand other patterns that exist, because patterns repeat themselves. So now if you want to look at a pattern that's playing itself out on this planet right now that will give us insight about what is going on.
So I say, look inside a caterpillar that's growing.
And a caterpillar represents, let's say, 7 billion cells living under the same skin. Each cell is a citizen.
And guess what? They're like people like us. They're working every day. Cells in the digestive system are taking the food and breaking it down and making products out of it.
Some cells are the motility cells. Those are the cells that move the caterpillar around. The structures of like our highways with trucks and vehicles carrying materials all over the place, something like that.
Cells of the immune system are taking their job of protecting the system. Respiration system is making sure fresh oxygen is being delivered. So all the cells have jobs. The caterpillar's growing. If you were in there and a reporter, you look around going, yeah, the economy is going great guns. It's growing every day. Everybody's working, full employment. This is the kind of thing we love to see. How much are we growing every day? Some percent every day.
And then the caterpillar reaches a certain stage of growth. And at that stage of growth, it just stops eating. It can't take it anymore at this point. It's reaching a maximum size. Then if you're a cell inside that community, imagine what would happen. That you're on the job and all of a sudden there's less food coming in and you're a digestive cell and you say, well, man, the work is slowing down here. The factory is slowing down. Then all of a sudden it gets to such a low level that many cells get laid off of the job. Now their cell's not working. Why? There's not enough food coming in to keep them all working. And as the food shuts down, then the other jobs are affected, because if there's no food, then there's no energy, and all the systems start laying off cells, and pretty soon there's massive chaos under the skin of a caterpillar. Why? The systems stop growing, the cells are out of work, nothing is evolving, and the thing is falling apart. If you were a cell in that caterpillar body at that time, you would look around and say, oh my God, our world is coming to an end. And yet, in the midst of those billions of cells,
in among them are other cells that are genetically identical to them. No different. But they think differently. They respond to the signals differently.
These cells have the interesting name called imaginal cells. And these imaginal cells come up with new visions. And what happens is, in the midst of all this chaos, when all the other cells are running around thinking the end of the world is coming, the new imaginal cells are laying out new ideas, new visions, a new plan, a new scheme, a new way of life. And around these ideas, the cells reorganize, and they start to create new massive organizations to create something much more fabulous than the previous system. A system that is much more sustainable, a system with a higher level of evolution. And that system they're constructing called the butterfly. So there's a transition from an old world of caterpillar with an old belief system and an old way of life that was no longer sustainable.
And therefore, you have two choices in this world right now. You can retain your caterpillar status and go, oh my God, the sky is falling, and be in fear. Or you can say, the caterpillar is going, I want to build the butterfly. Why? Because if I become active and, positive in the process of building the butterfly, I'm engaged, I'm working, we're creating the future. If I sit there and bemoan the loss of the caterpillar, then I'm making myself sick and everything around me. Why? I'm not contributing to our evolution. And so, where are we? We're at the demise of the caterpillar stage of civilization and the rise of the butterfly.
What we have to recognize is that all this crisis, etc., is not outside of consciousness. It is also inside of consciousness. There is a plan to this madness. If we look at biological evolution, all big evolution is preceded by a catastrophe. So this is evolution of the human being that is going on right now. From being overly concerned with the negative emotions and the rational mind to listen to the values, love, beauty, justice, truth, goodness. We need to hear that. But how do we hear that without the pangs of suffering?
I believe the issue is how can we cause the largest number of people to understand that we are in fact all one, to understand our unity.
The environment has to be changed so that we are supported in a way where we respect each other, while our value systems have to understand that we cannot survive any longer through our logical reasoning with the competitive mentality that's been perpetuated for so many generations. If the environment continues to reinforce this selfishness, it's going to be that much more difficult to climb out of it. So if we create an environment that helps us to have the courage to give, and it rewards and reinforces giving, then I think we'll move much more quickly into that type of bestowal mentality.
What we're beginning to see now is the fall of all the major institutions, whether it's economy, politics, education, healthcare, every fundamental level of institution in the world. So there's going to have to be changes at every level. And it starts with education and awareness. Why? Because the knowledge we bought into of who we are and why we're here turns out to be archaic beliefs that are not supporting our survival. We have to go from our old limiting beliefs that brought us to the current state of the world, rewrite those beliefs so that as we take the next step forward, we do so with new awareness, new power, and a new understanding of where we want to go. So we need to change education.
Just imagine what would happen if we changed our environment completely. What if we would constantly hear in the news, through art, entertainment, advertisement, that we're all interdependent, that we're all interconnected as one integral system? How would our world look like? How would you relate to all the others in that system?
You would suddenly begin to feel that you relate to others as somewhat close to you. You will be less concerned about how do I exploit the other, how do I manipulate others, take advantage of them. You'd begin to see that the other person is somehow close to you. You'll have some affinity towards the others, like they belong to you. You'll start considering them just like you think about your children or your family. You take them into consideration when you think about doing something in life. You think, how will it affect them? So that is the kind of change we need to go through. And it can happen to us through the proper environment that we create for ourselves.
Well, we have these negative emotional brain circuits of competitiveness and greed and jealousy and anger and what have you, but we can also create a reality in which we make positive emotions for ourselves and in our relationships, and we can create positive emotional brain circuits. Brain circuits that we have created by voluntary acts of loving, deliberately, by practicing. That will then mollify the negative emotional brain circuit, so we can overcome our base desires.